In this session, we're going to talk about biases and humility. We have talked about accurate thought, and we have laid a foundation for how important accurate thought is. Now let's talk about two things, one that gets in the way and one that becomes the solution. And the first one is biases, the second one is humility. So we're going to deal with those now. Biases are those little demons that influence your thinking without you thinking about them, and we're going to render them powerless in this activity. We're gonna go through a process that'll help you to render those biases powerless right now, and then we're gonna really pound on that as we go through the process. Okay? Then humility becomes the power that fills that vacuum that's left by the departure of the biases. It's not quite as linear as that sounds, but the easiest way for me to describe it is in a kind of a linear fashion. But the biases are the things that get in your way. Humility is the thing that empowers the departure of the biases. So we're going to talk about those as we go. Let's deal with biases first. Number one, accept that you have biases of which you may or may not be aware. You don't have to know, you don't have to name them, and I don't even want you to think about them right now. But just be aware of the fact that you have biases, and those biases influence you. Beware that they exist. I want you to name them. Don't think about naming them. Just admit that you have them seems to disarm them. And the more honest you can be with your biases, the less they're going to get in your way. So let's talk about what we're going to do. Don't do anything with the biases at this point in time. Don't start out by going, oh, I'm biased about this, and I can't think straight about that. And oftentimes our biases are very personal. I'm not creative. I can't think as smart as other people do. And so we start getting those biases get in our way. Don't try to defend them. Don't try to defeat them. Just recognize the fact that they exist. Next, think of something. And this is really important. Think of something that you once firmly believed and that you've changed your opinion about. We've all had those things that we once really believed in this thing, or we once really believed that thing, or we once, I mean, think about that. From the age of a child, as you grew up, you had beliefs in some things. You might have had a belief in the boogeyman. You might have thought something was hiding under your bed. You might have thought that an Easter bunny delivered stuff to your living room in the middle of the night. All kinds of things that come into play, and we've changed our opinion about those things. Now, that's called growth, right? It's not just changing. It's not flip-flopping. We've had this negative connotation about people who have grown in their understanding of life, and we're constantly throwing rocks at politicians because they have grown in their understanding, and growth is a good thing. Maybe those things that you've changed your opinion about, maybe that was a complete change. Maybe you took a 180-degree change. Maybe it was just a slight deviation. But whatever the amount of change, recognize that change took place. It's important to understand that you're constantly in a growth mode. And if you're not, then you're not growing as a person. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to give you a little exercise here, and this is the exercise. I want you to take this paper right here. Now, you're going to have a way to print this off. You'll be able to print this, and this is what I want you to do. On the left-hand side, I want you to write down your previously held belief. And I don't care what it was. This might be good if you go back to your childhood and take one of those things that you believed as a child. And then take a look at what were the factors that changed that. What caused me to change my opinion about that thing? What caused me to change that previously held belief? I may have thought that I wasn't a creative person, but I have discovered that I am. What caused that to change? Who pointed that out to me? Make a list of those things. Just write some things down. Make it really simple. Don't make this a difficult exercise. Make it a simple exercise. And I'm going to show you the process that we're going to go through with that. And it's on the next page here. I want you to start asking questions. Where did that change come from? Where did it come from? Was it because other people in my class? Was it because of the community that I lived in? Was it because of the church that I attended? Was it because, where did that change idea, where did that concept come from? What caused it to happen? Was there something? Was it a moment in time? Was it an evolving process? Where did it come from? And what caused it to happen? When did it happen? Did it happen at a crisis point in my life? Did it happen at an important time in my life? Did it happen at a growth time in my life? Was I on a trip? Was I away from home? Was I away from my family? You start asking questions about what caused me to change. What caused me to let go of that belief and hang on to this one. And when you recognize those change factors, it'll help you. You'll also get in the habit of asking all of the right questions. Who was behind it or who encouraged it? Because community is an important part of change. Community helps us to grow. Sometimes it can be very negative, but sometimes it can be very influential in a very positive way. What happened when the change factor did its work? What happened? Did you feel good about yourself? Did you feel bad that you ever once held that belief? Did you feel bad for the people who still do? What happened when the change factor did its work? Do you see what we're doing? We're developing the habits of asking questions, even questions about the habits that we have, like certain thought processes that we've had. And then finally, and this is the value of community, who supported you when that change was happening? Who supported you when that change happened? And here's the reason for asking that. Is because we need to recognize and we need to be grateful. We need to practice gratitude when change takes place. We need to be grateful for the people who helped us grow. And sometimes that growth is I abandoned something that was really bad and negative, and I grew as a person. Sometimes I went through a really bad experience so that I might grow into a really good person. And when was the last time you thanked the person who helped you change your thinking? This is really important. I came to this realization that the best way that I was going to be able to grow as an individual was to go back and thank all of those people that I couldn't do all of them, but to go back and thank those people who helped me to get to where I am right now. And I had to thank them. It meant I had to thank my high school principal, who helped me in spite of myself and not because of me, who helped me because he saw value in helping me change my thinking. And let me tell you, that was not an easy task for him. And then the second part of this is, what can you do to recognize their influence in your life? And believe it or not, my high school principal and I became really, really good friends. And we remained friends throughout the remainder of his life. And the day that he died, I wrote a little tribute to him on Facebook, and I thanked him for not giving up on me when he really should have. When I probably would have given up had I been in his shoes, but he didn't. He stuck with it, and he took me through the process, and he hammered away at me to make me and forge me into the person that I am. And so I shared that personal experience on Facebook, and 53 of my students who I had taught in school actually thanked him for his influence on my life. Sometimes we have to recognize that person, and I do that by giving them credit. I do that by talking about Dean Brown whenever I can, because he was my high school principal. There was lots of other people who helped become those influences in my life. And we've got to do what we can to recognize them, because there's real power in thanking the people or the events that caused you to change. And here's the reason why. Don't forget that law of effect. You were supposed to read that about the law of effect and the 10 laws or rules that you dare not break as a solution hacker. And the law of effect says you get more of what you reinforce or reward. The more you recognize and respond to those influences that cause you to change and grow, the more of those influences you're going to get. You want to face the future powerfully and be able to provide powerful solutions to other people's problems. The way you do it is you thank the influences that have been a powerful part of your growth process in your past, because you're always going to get more of what you reinforce. Reinforce the changes that you need to make in your life. Reinforce the people and that have influenced that. Reinforce the processes that influence that. Maybe the greatest change took place when you were on a trip. Maybe you need to take the same trip again. Whatever it is, reinforce those changes that you need to make in your life, and begin by thanking those who've influenced you toward a positive change. And then expect more to come your way. Okay? Then what we're going to do is we're going to start to think with humility. There's a place for an ego trap. I know I have one, but it's not in the thinking process. I have a gigantic ego, but I realize how much it gets in my way in the thinking process. And this is where we're going to just remind ourselves that we need to think with humility. Suspending judgment requires that you think humbly. It requires that you set aside that know-it-all attitude that hinders accurate thought. If I'm going to get accurate truth, if I'm going to get accurate thought, if I'm going to think right thoughts, then I've got to set aside what I thought was important and open myself up to, by using that affirmation that I gave you in the previous study, by using that affirmation, I don't know everything that can be known. So I open myself, I approach the subject with the freedom to allow the truth that I find to take me to conclusions that might be very different than what I thought originally. Humility fills that vacuum left by the know-it-all attitude, and it creates the path that leads to an open mind, and an open mind leads to accurate thinking, and accurate thinking leads to powerful solutions. And that's the process that we're going to master as we become solution hackers.